The formation and protection of sustainable freedom, equality and justice in society depends totally on the exact sense of establishment of national sovereignty. Therefore, the basis of freedom, equality and justice is national sovereignty. Freedom in our society and in our state is limitless. Its borders are present and defined by the protection of the principle that makes it limitless. The nation that knows and appreciates the value of direct sovereignty will crush any possible threat against this sacred sovereignty. These are the words of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk in 1923. Mustafa Kemal was a Turkish field marshal and revolutionary statesman who led Turkey as its first president from 1923 until his death in 1938. Prior to this becoming Turkey's first president, Ataturk organized an independence movement with the goal of ending foreign occupation of Turkey following World War I. Using Soviet weapons and massive popular support, Ataturk liberated his country from foreign oppression and in the process founded the modern state of Turkey. Mustafa Kemal's government espoused industrialization and adopted new law codes based on European models. By the late 1920s, Ataturk's government had deposed the Caliph, joined the League of Nations, improved literacy rates, given women the right to vote, closed all religious courts and schools, prohibited the wearing of headscarves among public sector employees, lifted the ban on alcohol, adopted the Gregorian calendar in place of the Islamic calendar, made Sunday a day of rest instead of Friday, and changed the Turkish alphabet from Arabic letters to Roman ones. Although progressive for his time, Ataturk was far from perfect. He also imposed single-party rule, closed opposition newspapers, and suppressed leftist workers' organizations. Here's a thought exercise. Imagine if a leader like Ataturk was alive today. How do you think he would respond to institutions like the EU and NATO? What would he think of the rise of Islamism and the fundamentalist Iranian regime? What would his response be to Islamist attacks on Charlie Hebdo magazine, French schoolteacher Samuel Paty, and of course Salman Rushdie? Doubtless, he would have strong views on all of these issues. Although both populists, the difference between Ataturk and Erdogan is stark. While Ataturk was committed to the French revolutionary tradition and Enlightenment ideas of progress, President Erdogan is wedded to traditional cosmopolitan Islamist thought. According to President Erdogan, people who criticize conservative Islam require mental treatment. Following the terrorist killing of schoolteacher Samuel Paty for showing a blasphemous cartoon to his class, Turkish President Erdogan called for a boycott of French goods, branding French President Macron as hateful for defending the right to blaspheme. Many on the Western left seem to agree with this Islamist cosmopolitan idea. Teaching unions did not rush to defend Samuel Paty's right to not be killed on the street, neither did many liberals who believe that offending conservative Muslims should be a hate crime. The fact that it fell to a centre-right liberal called Macron to defend Republican humanist values is shocking, considering that these values, rooted in the idea of national citizenship, originated on the left wing of the first French Parliament. 100 years ago, the term nationalism was used differently from how it often is today. Back then, in an age of empires, nationalism meant belief in self-determination. Many nationalist movements were anti-imperialist and believed that national borders should not be violated through conquest or other means. This was a view shared by progressive nationalists such as Ataturk. Linked to this idea was the French revolutionary concept of citizenship, which conferred sacred rights upon the people of a nation, rights regarding freedom of speech, freedom of religion, universal suffrage, and economic justice. This was a view shared by the English-born revolutionary Thomas Paine, who, in his pamphlet Common Sense, made the case for national independence and self-rule. Like Ataturk after him, Thomas Paine saw American self-determination as a vehicle for radical republicanism. Like Ataturk, he was a progressive nationalist. Unlike the other founding fathers of America, Paine was opposed to slavery, supported universal suffrage, and believed strongly in economic justice. Most importantly, he saw citizenship as a guarantor of these natural rights. In almost every way, Thomas Paine was a man ahead of his time. I think one of my favourite quotes from Thomas Paine that really encapsulates this idea of national self-rule is this, quote, "A body of men holding themselves accountable to nobody ought not to be trusted by anybody." If only Paine was still around today, I'm sure he'd have lots to say about a number of such institutions that just refuse to die, no matter how irrelevant they are. If Paine were alive today, he would no doubt continue to be a thorn in the side of our unaccountable elites. But if we did have revolutionary leaders like Paine and Ataturk around today, in our increasingly polarized and disaffected world, who would support them? Would they be considered radical progressives or far-right loons? In our current state of world politics, a leader like Paine or Ataturk would not fit into the preformed ideological molds that all leaders today must fit into. I can imagine people calling Ataturk and Paine Islamophobic for their secularist views, and they would likely become hate figures among Islamists in the same way that Macron currently is. This demonstrates the extent to which the contemporary left has given up on the liberal humanist ideas of the Enlightenment. Additionally, it is almost impossible to find a progressive today that will make the case for national sovereignty. Notably, this is more the case in Europe, where both conventional right and left-wing politicians remain ideologically wedded to the idea of the European Union. Likewise, the idea of progressive nationalism would seem out of place in countries like China and India, which, while strongly nationalist, lack the strong commitment or belief in individual rights for a variety of historic and cultural reasons. For Chinese communists, believing in democracy, human rights, autonomy for Hong Kong and Taiwan makes you pro-Western and thus anti-Chinese. Similar sentiment exists in India under Modi's Hindu nationalist government, which believes that Muslims, Sikhs, and Christians aren't really Indian. For progressive nationalists today, a rare oasis of sanity is found in the writings of David Goodhart. As he writes in his book, Progressive Nationalism, as ties of religion and ethnicity weaken, national identity may be the best way to preserve the left's collective ideals. Similarly, as John Judis argues in his book, The Nationalist Revival, Trade, Immigration, and the Revolt Against Globalization, the emergence of globalization in the 1970s has undermined the labor union and the locally owned factory and business and the community they sustained, finding themselves at the mercy of currency flows, footloose multinational corporations, and migrant flows, and afflicted by anomie and a sense of powerlessness. The individual has little recourse except the nation. Central to these arguments is that national sovereignty has been essential in the advancement of broadly social democratic policies. In order to forward the collectivist objective of the left, citizens need to have basic level of affinity and solidarity that just does not exist internationally. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's that there is a progressive case to be made for nationalism, and that when it's been tried by the left, it has been largely successful. If you have any thoughts on this video, then please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please also don't forget to like and subscribe. If you check out my channel, then I've got lots more videos similar to this, and I hope to make even more soon. Thanks a lot, and bye for now.